these errors from.
I forgot to take us off. Whatever. Hey guys, Ryan Fowler here with the Inner Game Group. We are live, Inner Masculine Live Inner Game Group. Got a great show for you today. This is something I have people mention to me from time to time, like how to stop it. And we're going to talk about rumination. So rumination, thank you, Jordan, for the topic today. For those of you who don't know, it's pondering over mistakes of the past, regrets of the past, resentments of the past, just excessively thinking about it. And it doesn't do you any good. It just makes you feel bad, keeps you stuck. But why do people ruminate and they just don't move forward? We have a couple good clips from some therapists, psychologists that talk about the subject today. And we're going to dive into it and we're going to give our take on it, which is actually, hey, removing trauma. But let's dive into what rumination's about. But first, let me introduce the crew, Jordan, Kurtz, and Tim. Introduce yourselves, guys. Jordan first.
I just realized you made the title alliteration, 3 R's. I don't know if you did that intentionally. But
yeah.
Nice. Anyway,
not
my name.
But now I
kind
know
of works. Nice. Well, my name is Jordan Kurtz. From JordanKurtzHypnosis.com. I help people end their limiting beliefs and unlock their full potential.
Rumination and resentment, you're right.
My name is Tim Costello with Tim at ClearThatTrauma.com, and I can help you take control of your life by removing subconscious traumas that have developed in your childhood that hold you back from being successful.
All right, very good. So thank you both. Both these guys know what they're doing. So do I some of the time. So it's an interesting topic today because I think a lot more people do this than we realize. A lot of people pass regrets, pass resentments. Before we get into that, just want to give a real quick plug. You see in the bottom left of my screen, innermasculine.com free/ebook. And look at all this great content, totally free. It's about an hour read, but this is dense. So if you go to innermasculine.com /free-ebook, just pop in your email, you get the free ebook. What is a subconscious program? Carl Jung, the father of modern psychotherapy, said, until you make the subconscious conscious, we said unconscious, same thing, it'll rule your life and you will call it fate. Take fate into your own hands. This right here determines 90 to 95% of your behavior. Not the self-help book. That's good to read, but that's 10% maybe. It's not 90, 95%. This is it. So if you want to understand this most important part, this affects your behavior by far more than anything else. You want to understand what's going on? This is going to tell you. It's going to give you the facts, the fundamentals. You'll be able to see it in your own life, how subconscious programs affect us as adults, how they develop in childhood. What is a subconscious program? Why does our brain keep us stuck? Procrastination, self-sabotage, avoiding pain, addictions, covering pain with pleasure, all of that. The 5 core traumas. There's only 5 subconscious traumas. How is that messing people up? It's all in here. So innermasculine.com /free-ebook. And go there and get it. And it'll be sent to your inbox or an email right away. So interesting topic today. I used to ruminate a lot. I don't know about you guys. Have you guys ruminated in the past? I'd be surprised if you have, Tim, but maybe you have. I don't know.
I never ruminate in the past, but I certainly ruminate about the past.
In the present, about the past. Okay.
Yes, everybody does it. Every living soul on this earth ruminates about something.
And does it help anything?
There is some productivity to rumination, but the rumination we're talking about is not a past assessment and gaining experience or knowledge or learning from that assessment. It is regretting the things that we did, and then trying to figure out why we did it and try to figure out what would have been different. So there comes a point in rumination where you start living in a fantasy land.
Yep.
Right? You start creating things that don't exist. And it does make you, like Emma's going to see in the clipper, it does make you feel a bit good. We'll leave it there as we get deeper, but you know, we all do it. Some of it do it. Some of us ruminate to production. Some of us ruminate to destruction.
Yeah, I do think a little rumination can be helpful. We'll get into that later after we watch these clips. But if you're just ruminating, you're stuck. And it's not doing, you know, anyone any good. I will say rumination can also, for me, my ruminations was, yeah, some regret, but more, you know, the emotional, verbal, psychological abuse I went through and just all the resentment tied to that. Yeah. And just being preoccupied with that and then getting down, getting depressed, angry, resentful, you know, on top of that, because, you know, at the end of the day, I couldn't change that. I couldn't change. It was like, this is so unfair, but it's in the past. You can't change the past. It happened.
There is a little bit of why me in rumination.
Yeah. Oh, huge amount of why me for me. You know, why me is like, why is my life set up as this carefully constructed trap to keep me down? And I think a lot of, you know, blue pill trauma, you know, in the manosphere, which is, you know, divorce, or you were raised to be this nice guy and figure you get a nice girl, only to find all these girls just flaking on you, ignoring you, you know, and then, you know, my story right now, I'm telling you guys that not my story anymore, but first 38 years of my life, more or less. Yeah. You know, honestly is just, you know, life is so unfair. And why was I told all these lies? And now I'm just struggling and, you know, and feeling powerless, but also resenting the past. So we got some clips for you guys today. Anything to add before we go into these clips, Jordan?
Yeah, I've said several times on this show that I think people will spend a lot of time trying to shove away negative thoughts, and they get involved in things like addiction to alcohol, drugs, that sort of stuff. And so rumination is almost the opposite of that, where you get so consumed by negative things in your past. And so kind of what we're going to analyze here today is kind of, is rumination helpful at all? And I kind of, spoiler alert, I'm going to probably come out and say that if you find yourself ruminating a lot, that's probably a sign that you have something in your subconscious that you haven't dealt with properly yet.
Oh, 100%. Because I don't ruminate at all anymore. I fixed this for me. Oops, Tim went out. We'll see if he comes back on. I imagine his internet just went out.
Yeah. But yeah, that's what I've kind of noticed is that if you can get to the point, if you have these hypnosis tools, rumination can be helpful because it can help you achieve clarity in the things 100%. That's wrong. But rumination
and clarity and never move beyond that, it's not helpful.
Right,
but I agree.
Right. You're just sitting in it. So, and that's what I think. And she says something, and we're going to get into
let's go ahead and play the clips. Yeah. And then I think all of our comments are going to have even more clarity and to them. All right, so we got a short that kind of sums up rumination nicely, and then we got a longer clip to go. And, you know, it's like 10-minute clip, but we'll play at 1.5 speed. So here we go. If I can push the button correctly. All right, here we go.
Thinking a lot about negative stuff that happened in the past or things that could go wrong in the future. It's called ruminative brooding. And rumination is a mode of cognitive processing that involves repetitively and passively focusing on and brooding about things that lead to negative emotions. For example, you have an awkward interaction with your manager, and then you can't stop thinking about every detail, which makes you feel terrible. And then you worry about what your manager thinks of you, and you feel even worse. If you don't actively problem solve or shift your thinking to what can...
This is kind of a key into why the limitations of cognitive behavioral therapy, by the way. I'll get into that, but we'll keep going.
You're only going to experience more negative emotions associated with the experience. So if you notice yourself brooding, bring your thoughts back to awareness and ask, Is this within my control? And then, what can I do about it? And then take action. Action in the present moment is the best antidote. Do you find yourself overthinking?
Okay. Any comments on that, Jordan?
Well, yeah, I mean, the example she described, I've had. I've been interacting with, someone at work or something.
I don't know if you saw us playing the clip, Tim. Welcome back.
I did. Yeah. When you don't reboot your computer for a year, there comes a point where it just goes.
Okay. Sorry. Keep going, Jordan.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've had this type of interaction with someone at work in the past, and I actually used that as a way, like, I noticed I was particularly ruminating about the interaction after it had happened. And then I realized, why am I doing this? And I realized that there was an element of toxic shame that
100%.
that wouldn't have been revealed otherwise. And so these type of things, like the example she gave, where you have even sometimes relatively neutral interaction with a coworker, but then you go back to your desk or something and you're like, oh shoot, did I do something wrong? Did they take that the same way? And logically in their head, they probably forgot about you, but you're still ruminating and going in your head over and over again. And that's a really good sign of, okay, there's some toxic shame I need to clear out through hypnosis. And so, like you were saying, with the cognitive behavioral therapy, she says, she's like, the best way is to take action after it happened. Well, yeah, okay, but how about let's just stop it from happening to begin with hypnosis. But
exactly. And what I want to point out is here is like the overall very, very broad strokes, because there's a lot of CBT techniques, but very broad strokes. What most CBT methods is when this problem emerges, do this to manage it.
Right.
Unfortunately, that does not fix the root issue.
Correct.
Over a long period of time, it can gradually somewhat help. I did 100 sessions over 15 years for my manic depression, CPTSD, general anxiety disorder, rage, resentment. Mike Harton, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mike. Hey, P-Dubs.
P-Dubs, I saw you saluted a bunch of my videos yesterday. Thanks, man. This guy's such a stud. All right. So that's the issue. They manage stuff. When you ruminate, do this. That does maybe a little bit over a long time to reduce the frequency of ruminating, but it's not fixing the root issue. And I agree, the root issue is it's toxic shame or trapped anger, resentment. Tim, what are your thoughts? Anything?
So I want to go back to the root, right? And the root of the word rumination or ruminating, whatever, is ruminate. And ruminate means just to think deeply about something.
Yeah.
The good part of rumination, now, Ryan, you ruminate very productively. We just talked about this earlier, where you will read 10 or 12 different sources of information and ideas and philosophies, and you will ruminate over that, and you will come out with some type of product or something that says this is a good thing, and then you'll prove that particular thing out. When we did asset protection together, you did that. You read court cases, you read codes from different states and federal code and stuff like that, and you start processing that in your mind, ruminating, right? And then you would come out with this plan, and then you would sort of take apart that plan consciously and try to make it work. But what happens in the next?
Yeah.
What's that? Go ahead.
I'm just saying there's not subconscious trauma being
correct. Yeah, that's good stuff. Good productive rumination. The rumination that the topic about what we're talking about is what Jordan was keying on, is if you have some type of subconscious trauma, and let's just name them out. One is you don't feel good enough. Number two, you don't belong somewhere or belong to something. Number three, you can't get what you want, or when you get what you want, you don't deserve what you have, so on and so forth. You can't
keep it, yeah.
Or you've got some anger or rage or something against somebody or something, some activity, or you don't feel safe. Generally, it's probably 1 or 5, that generally start triggering us into that. You know, Jordan mentioned having a conversation with somebody and you walk away from that conversation and you're like, oh, that didn't go exactly like I wanted it to go. And their facial reaction was a little different than I was expecting. So now you are creating a fantasy about what actually happened because, like Jordan said again, they forgot all about it. They moved on. They didn't even give it a second thought, and you're still stuck ruminating, and that brings that down. You feel bad. You might have to eat something to make yourself feel better, or maybe even go control something or get angry or something. That negative rumination is what we're talking about. And I want to separate the two. Rumination is good, but when it's coupled with subconscious trauma, it will take you down the emotional wormhole.
Yeah, and actually, you know, we have a process called Dive to the Five that is a type of rumination, but it's thinking about bad subconscious programs in you tied to past trauma to get connected to them, and then you immediately do a session and clear it. If all you're doing is ruminating, then you're connecting to this bad stuff that's bringing you down, and now you just feel bad.
Correct.
So we have go ahead.
I was going to elaborate more on what Tim said. So Tim said, oh, you know, maybe the coworker gave me a weird look at some point and now you're thinking about it. Well, it could also be the case that they didn't do that. Correct. And then they're like, oh, shoot, my coworker reacted positively. Maybe they must want something from me. Maybe you're in this mindset of, I have to assume threats from other people, even when they don't present themselves, obviously.
Oh,
because if I don't, I might end up in an unsafe position later down the line because people in my past have presented positively one way and then later backstabbed me or did something like that. So I feel like I always have to be on guard, even when there's no apparent threats, and you can ruminate over
that. And that can be feeling unsafe. I think there's threats.
Absolutely. On the money.
Yeah. And you know, for me, before I cleared my trauma, I had bitter, resentful thoughts about my mom every day for from age 19, 18 until 38, pretty much every day would ruminate about the stuff she did that made me feel so worthless and trapped and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now we have another clip here. And so the rumination we're really focusing on is all, you know, tied to negative stuff, regret, depression, anger, resentment, feeling unsafe. And we have all, you know, thoughts in our head trying, you know, what could I have done different? You know, it was so unfair what this person did, and I'm so angry, and you're just brooding. So we have this clip that talks about what's called depressive rumination. It also mentions like anger and resentment and over abuse and etc. So we're going to play this 1.5 speed. It's, you know, it's like a 10-minute clip. So we'll shrink it down and we'll comment on this, but this is actually pretty good. She gives a lot of good advice here. So here we go. We'll play this. And if, you know, we might pause and comment. We'll see.
Depressive rumination is a type of overthinking where you create the habit of dwelling on the past. You rehash all of the terrible things you can think of over and over and over. Depressive rumination says, oh, why is my life so awful? Or why am I such a failure? Or why can't I ever be happy? I had one 23-year-old client who we'll call Ivan, and his girlfriend broke up with him, and he just kept dwelling on it over and over years later. He'd say, oh, why couldn't I make that relationship work? Why couldn't I be better? I'm never going to find someone who loves me. What's the matter with me? Why am I such a screw up? Now, rumination is like ruts in a road. Whenever you're not paying attention, you slip it back.
It's like trap trauma.
Into thinking of
subconscious.
Right, it might be a little fast.
Okay, we'll do 1.25.
Yeah, it's a little fast.
It's not too fast for me. No, I totally get it. I agree.
Now, seriously, you can get more rumination done at 1.5 speed, by the way.
Yeah.
Regrets and trying to analyze the situation to figure it out. But then you spin your wheels and you think and you think and you never get anywhere. One of my other clients, Elena, she constantly dwelt in the past. She'd say, why did I buy that car? I am such an idiot. Or she'd say, oh, why am I so depressed? And then she'd worry about it for hours, every day, for months. But
no toxic shame there.
She didn't just dwell in the past. She projected it into the future. So in session, she'd say, oh, what if I never get better? And then she'd analyze.
I can't get what I want.
That.
Yep.
Now, another type of rumination is dwelling on how you were mistreated. Maybe your dad shamed you when you came out to him as gay, or your boss threw you under the bus at work, or your lover ghosted you, and you spend hours of your day wondering why they did that, alternating between resentment towards them and wondering if it was your fault. Rumination might also look like family.
Go ahead.
She said it right there. Resentment.
Yep.
100%. Feeling unsafe, resentment, toxic shame. This is what trauma, if it's big enough, this is what trauma can do. Subconscious trauma. By the way, so people who are traumatized over a breakup, they actually have abandonment and other trauma in their childhood that gets triggered and amplified by that breakup.
Yes.
That's actually the original source of why people can't get over exes. That's why it's subconscious stuff getting amplified and triggered. Go ahead.
It always boils down to those 5 things. I mean,
Always.
And that's
always.
And we might even want to do a show. This is actually one of the other topics for a show I was considering doing, was that you can always, it might be the seeing red cars phenomenon, but after doing this so much and watching a lot of like the self-help content, if you go into a lot of the self-help content, which is probably a lot of our audience, right? They're into the self-help and trying to get better. You find that they often talk about childhood trauma, anger, resentment, not feeling good enough. It always boils down to those 5 things. That's why Ryan's picked those as the dive to the 5. It always boils down to one of those 5 things, if not more than one.
Yeah, right? and why don't they identify that? Marissa Peer did a great job of identifying 3 of the 5. She's one of my major influences, fantastic therapist, but it really is just 5. I've done, I don't know, 400 or 500 clients, however many. Never seen anything not fit in the 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they bleed into each other to a certain extent. A lot of times resentment is because sometimes the resentment is because somebody made you feel like you weren't good enough. They bleed into each other, but it's always, it's predictable.
Whatever happens to trigger one of those 5, you're there.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's see, Mike, you have a comment here. The hyper focus on objectively trivial situations is so time consuming.
Yes, sir.
Why do you think people hyper focus on trivial situations? We talk about trivial now, not like massive childhood abuse or a big breakup. Trivial things.
Well,
what's going on there?
If you're ruminating about it, and we'll call it negative rumination, it's not trivial to you. It's probably trivial in the grand scheme of things, like it isn't a breakup. It really wasn't abuse and whatever, but you will make that trivial thing huge. That's that hyper focus. It becomes a giant roadblock in your life.
Yeah, 100%. Says our internet is weak. That's weird. Okay, I'm going to reshare this, and I'm going to put the video at lower resolution because it says our internet's actually the internet's back up again.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get back to this. She actually is going to talk about the payoff of rumination, and this is a key into why people ruminate about things that may seem trivial. So let's take this off HD down to a 480p, still pretty good.
Emphasizing about how your life could have been better if you had done things differently. You might believe that thinking about your problems a lot may help you solve them. But here's the thing. In the long run, rumination can make you pretty miserable. In every quiet moment, you find yourself drawn to dwelling on your mistakes, your failings, the disappointments, and the letdowns. And the more time you spend in those ruts, the deeper they get. And then pretty soon it feels like your whole world is dark. And not only do you feel depressed, discouraged, or hopeless, those dark thoughts start to feel like the truth. Dwelling on depressive things becomes your new comfort zone. And being out of them feels awkward and weird. And hope and light just feel like some figments of some distant imagination. But even though rumination makes you depressed and unmotivated, you keep doing it for some reason, right? Be honest with yourself. It rewards you. Like maybe when you do it,
Absolutely.
Do you agree with this?
Yep. Even negative dopamine is still dopamine.
Yeah, it's actually peptides. When it's
Yeah.
negative, it's not, because dopamine always feels good, but there's something called peptide addiction, which is being addicted to negative, any emotion, including negative emotion. But
Consciously punishing yourself.
Well, yeah.
maybe-
Okay, comment on. It's like it's kind of a protection thing, because
It is.
if you're constantly thinking about threats, then you're less likely to, misinterpret a threat, which could really hurt you. So better to keep yourself in kind of a hyper anxious state all the time, so that something larger can't come in and really hurt you. And I think that's where that there's that he talks about, it's that validating feeling. It's kind of a.
She's talking about the past, though. This
Yeah.
is not looking at threats, which I agree is a type of rumination. But she's talking about past stuff, not threats right now. So
well, she'll get into it in the next bullet here.
Okay, we'll keep going.
Maybe you feel like if you just think about the bad stuff more, you could prevent it. Maybe it's an attempt to regain control over something that you have no control over, which is the past, right? Be honest with yourself for a minute.
100% right what she's saying.
Yep.
And that's why rumination, if it goes beyond, hey, let's uncover trauma so we can clear it, or let's see if I can get some insights and learn. If it goes beyond that in trying to control things you can't control, and you could spend hours and hours and hours and hours wasting time over something you can't control.
Do you feel a sense of pleasure in doing it for a moment? Do you get some validation wallowing in how bad you are or how bad someone else is?
For me, it was trying to justify my anger. So I would feel angry and resentful because of my abuse. And so I'd ruminate about all the bad things my mom did to try and justify my internal anger and resentment, which it was justified. But I felt I had to justify it because I felt I'm not good for feeling resentful.
It gave you a little bit of control.
People, so then I ruminate over why I was angry and why I should feel angry and why I am justified. And I start thinking about all the things my mom did, because I had some shame tied to being resentful. I'm bad for resenting my mom. What kind of person resents and is angry at their own mom? She's supposed to be good. Why, am I a bad son for resenting her? So I'd ruminate over all the bad things she did. So, and that's ties into what she's talking about.
Doesn't it feel just...
Go ahead.
It's just everything you just said I relate to. It's funny, but I think what Tim said is it's the control aspect. If you kind of put yourself, because I find when I've ruminated in the past, I put myself back in that scenario that was really negative. I'm just like, you did this to me, you did this to me, this happened, and it feels kind of cathartic in the moment, because it's like Tim said, you kind of feel like you almost have control over the situation, because you can control your thoughts towards the thing. The problem is after that kind of effect wears off, you are just kind of miserable.
Yeah.
But people keep doing it because they, like she said, they kind of need that little bit of hit of I had control in the past, even though it puts them the negative side effects are you're just miserable afterwards.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
And they come out of that, by the way, that exercise, more depressed than going into it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of liken it to a thirsty man in the desert with a hole in his stomach, and he sees a glass of water and drinks it, and trying to sate his thirst, but it just goes right out the hole, and he's still thirsty. All right, we'll keep going.
Just a little bit good to remind yourself that you're a complete failure and there's nothing you can do about it. I get it that this doesn't work and it doesn't feel good, but you have to admit it's a little
100%. Yeah, not good enough.
bit rewarding.
This is just trauma. I mean, trauma's down in you and it's coming up. And you're trying to resolve it or do something to make yourself feel better, but no matter how much you do this, it never resolves the trauma. When the internal subconscious trauma is resolved, you stop ruminating because you just don't have these bad feelings anymore. And you really just, you're like, this happened in the past. I'm okay with it. Yeah.
Sometimes. Now, once when I was in grad school, I'd been on a handful of dates with this guy. Let's call him Alexander. And then things didn't go anywhere after that. And about 6 months later, I'm visiting my parents on Christmas Day. And guess who knocks on the door? Alex. Now, I had no idea he was coming, and I was pretty surprised to see him. And my parents were like wondering if there was something going on that they didn't know about. It was kind of weird, but we found a quiet place to catch up on life, and we talked for a bit. And he said, I really wish we had tried to see if this relationship would work. He said, I really regret that we didn't keep dating. Now, just to clarify, I didn't break up with him or anything. Like, we just were never exclusive. We just never took it any further. So I basically replied, there's no reason we can't try dating again. We're both single. I'm willing. Let's give it a shot. And then he got super awkward and said something about needing to go fix his car. And basically, that was the end of it. Now, for all I know, he had a dozen reasons why he didn't want to date me. Like, that's cool, right?
Isn't that strange?
But if we take it at face value, what he said is the essence of depressive rumination.
Run from that guy.
Yeah. So why do you guys think he did that? He
Dude,
said,
control, fishing her along, screwing with her.
Why would he do that?
Well, there's probably some communication in their relationship back in the past that he's ruminating on, and he's got to come over and confront it, gain a little control from it, and run away.
Yeah. It could be a situation where part of him wants to be with her, but then, okay, why didn't you take it further back then, guy? And the reason he didn't take it further back then, I guarantee you, was because of what's in his subconscious.
Yep.
And it's still there, which keeps him from taking it further now. So what this means is we regret the past because of past behaviors. But if the subconscious programs are still there, we're still going to have the same behaviors.
Correct.
Part of him I do think wants to get with her, but he probably has some sort of attachment disorder that's still there that keeps him from getting with her. So he's just kind of stuck, meaning this is entirely for that guy, and for people who ruminate, this is 100% an internal issue.
Yep.
And
he gets the external solution here. Okay, I'll start dating you again. And then he just takes off.
Yep.
Because it's not external, it's internal, and his trauma is still there. It's him, and his subconscious trauma had in this instance actually had nothing to do with her. She gave him the solution he wanted, and he walked away. Go ahead, guys.
And
I think you have
it also could be the number 3, which is I can't get what I want, or I don't deserve it.
Mm-hmm.
And so if he just leaves because I don't feel like I deserve to be with anyone or this person, or I deserve maybe a little bit,
it's
but
internal.
Right. And so if you actually have to confront the person about it, then you have to confront the feelings that you don't deserve it. If you just ghost, you can kind of compartmentalize that away. It's less that feeling like I don't deserve this is less right in his face. And so we can kind of, instead of having that confrontation, he can just move to the side. So that could be, we don't really know why he did what he did, but it's likely that it has to do with subconscious trauma. Maybe
I'm actually like 90%. I know in very broad strokes what happened, like 90%, which is he has something internally that keeps him from getting too close from her. He wants intimacy. He wants a girlfriend, but he has internal programs either makes him scared of intimacy, like you said, feeling unworthy, undeserving, whatever. He wants it, but he has subconscious trauma. And so he actually goes to her because he does want to get back with her. But then when she actually gives him the solution of, hey, I'll get back with you, the subconscious trauma that kept him from pursuing it further in college is still there. And he's still undeserving, unworthy, feeling it's unsafe, whatever that might be. That's still there. So he can't move forward just like he couldn't move forward before. He wants it, but his internal programs block the path. Now, I know I'm plugging my ebook, but there was a reason the title to my ebook is How Our Subconscious Mind Works and Why It Keeps Us Stuck. Rumination is a form of staying stuck. You're in the suspended animation of there's an issue and you think about it and you think about it and you think about it and there's no resolution. What these people are doing, the therapists are giving you tools to stop the behavior of rumination, or when it comes up to quickly stop it, etc. But you're still not moving forward. You're just not ruminating anymore. That's what
again, typical cognitive behavioral therapy,
management of
family
symptoms, not fixing
therapy.
the issue.
Yeah, this lady is a licensed family therapist in
I think
Utah.
she's a good lady.
No question. She got a lot of great information, and she's probably helping a lot of people cope with what they have.
Yeah, and it's helping to a point, but it's not. It's symptom management. It's I got a headache. Let's take some, aspirin. But you're not fixing the tumor in their brain that keeps giving you headaches, or whatever that might be.
If you look at the topics of her channel, and I've watched about 9 hours of her videos.
Really? Okay.
I really enjoy listening to her, but everything is like, how to regulate, how to cope, journaling to get rid of anxiety, all of these coping mechanisms. And in typical licensed fashion, they never, ever get to the root of why this is happening. How to cope with it? Great. How about getting rid of it so you don't have to cope with it?
Yeah.
How about getting in there and clearing this subconscious trauma so less anxiety is around you, or less rumination? I mean, I don't do much negative rumination, but there was a pretty girl in high school. I sort of go, man, I just wasn't good enough for her. I mean, that kind of stuff. So you can't help some of that.
I remember when I was 35, still kind of like thinking about, oh man, that girl in college was so cute, and why can't I get a girl like her? And a girl from 10, 15 years earlier, that there's no way I'm gonna get with her. I know from experience, you clear trauma, you stop ruminating. It's automatic. You don't. For me, and pretty much for my clients, I'm not going to guarantee it's like this for everyone, but my observation, my personal experience, you clear the trauma, and there's just absolutely zero need to ruminate anymore.
Yeah,
now, I think these techniques are important. I think we should learn coping skills, because the fact of the matter is we're human beings, and we need to learn ways to handle our normal emotions. And even though we clear out subconscious trauma, our psyche is very vast, and there can always be hidden trauma that doesn't get triggered for years. There's always other layers of the onion, things to clear. So I really think the best approach is a combination of what she does with clearing out trauma when it comes
Absolutely.
up. It's more important to clear the trauma because you're fixing the root. But I do think these are helpful techniques. I do.
Yeah, I agree with Ryan, because there's a lot of credibility to doing things to stop doing negative things. But if you can get rid of the trauma at the root, then those things that you're going to participate in with a therapist are going to be a lot more productive and a lot more forward moving than just not removing the trauma and trying to cope with it.
Yep. Okay. Thanks, Tim. We'll keep going.
Of thinking a lot about your regrets and then never doing anything about them when you do have the chance. Like, I don't blame him. He was probably just still gaining those relationship skills, like we all have to do in our life. But this concept of like, oh, I'm gonna think about and talk about all the things I regret, but not do anything about them, prevented him from being able to connect on a deeper level or form a more meaningful relationship.
Well, that's another thing. If you're just thinking and talking, you're not taking action.
Right.
And some people are scared of taking action. Well, a lot of people. You dwell on all your past failures, but then you don't have to take action and risk failing again. You just dwell on the past instead of taking action. And thinking and ruminating and brooding is way safer than taking more risks to fix find a new girl. Oh, well, that is super emotionally risky.
That might be scary.
For a lot of people. So let's ruminate about this girl in the past. The truth is, you can find a better one. If you look long enough, you take enough action, you up level, whoever that girl was, you can find a better one. But they'd rather stay in the past and take the steps and move forward, because taking steps and move forward for a lot of people is scary, especially if you have a fear of rejection, if you have a fear of failure, these other traumas that keep you stuck. This is all about staying stuck. You're staying in this suspended animation, this limbo, because moving forward sucks. Getting back in a relationship with her, even though that guy had a chance, that's scary too. Let's just ruminate. But
Yeah.
it sucks. It sucks being in a limbo, being stuck. It freaking sucks. It may be safer than moving forward, but it sucks.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
And I think this is the type of thinking that's disordered, right? So now I get it, right? When you're depressed, it's super hard to get motivated. It's super hard to get yourself to take action and to make change happen. It's hard to have hope that things would ever work out. Like, I get that. But we at least have to get honest about the futility of thinking this way. We have to be honest that this type of thinking is self-deception. It's distorted. Your thoughts are lying to you. They feel super real, but they're lies. So these regrets and this distress, this feeling of, oh, nothing is ever going to work, it's just not true. And what we pay attention to, we get more of. Our brain literally makes more pathways for the things we pay attention to. So if we constantly pay attention to regrets, we get more regrets, not less. If we constantly pay attention to what we don't have enough of, our brain makes more pathways to pay attention to scarcity.
This is why, like, for example, gratitude's important. You focus on how great it is for what you have. Your brain attaches pleasure to that. Your brain makes you get more good things. She's talking, whatever we focus on, we get more of, 100%.
Yep.
The more you think about something, the deeper the grooves it creates in your brain, making it easier for you to think that way in the future. And if it's negative or unhelpful thinking, then that's a hard cycle to get out of. So let's talk about how to stop ruminating. And real quick, let me mention that this video is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp provides counseling with a license.
There's an ad.
Area.
Yeah, baby.
You can message anytime and you can talk with over the phone or video chat. So they make it really easy to start getting the support you need to change how you think and improve your mental health. So if you'd like to learn more, check out the link in the description to get 10% off your first month. Back to how to stop rumination. Let's start by making these thoughts super obvious. You can't change the things that you aren't aware of. So it could help to ask someone to point out when you're ruminating, or to use a mindfulness timer like Insight Timer app to check in with your thoughts throughout the day. Where do you ruminate? What time of day do you ruminate? What type of triggers set you off? Write down your common ruminations, hang it on the wall so that when you start down that path.
Yeah, so for our audience, a trigger is something that triggers a bad subconscious program. Painful emotions trapped in your subconscious. When you go through the world and anything in the outside world is a match for a painful belief in you, the pain tied to that belief is triggered. That's what a trigger is.
Here's what's important. If you can recognize those triggers, that becomes the beginning of the root cause analysis for why you're triggering.
Yeah,
Right.
it's good to get the clarity. It's good to know what's going on in your inner world. That's essential to actually then fixing stuff with, removing trauma with what we do is identify it, connect to it.
Because these are some of the questions I ask clients when I'm first talking with them is, when is it when are these feelings the strongest? What type of triggers set you off? What makes it worse? What makes it not as? So this analysis you can go through is helpful when you're trying to actually figure out root cause. But what I'm going to criticize her a bit because she's going to start to go on, and she might not know the hypnosis tools. We
Does
know
she need to
obviously.
talk first before you criticize, or criticize on what she said?
Well, she's going to start going into the cognitive behavioral therapy stuff you can do to try to mitigate these things. So she's like, I like the analysis that she's kind of describing here, but then she's going to go on to say, oh, if you just
let's play that, and then when you want me to pause and comment.
Okay, yeah, sure.
But she's doing what she's trained.
Yeah.
Yeah, and overall, I think she does help people to a point.
Yep.
Catch yourself. Now that you're noticing that you're doing it, you can start to replace rumination with these 5 rules. All right, rule number 1 is no why questions. So ask what questions instead. So instead of Elena asking, why am I so depressed? She can ask, oh, what is one small change that I can make to be healthier? And she could choose to go for a short walk every day. Instead of saying, oh, why can't I make a relationship work? Ivan could say, oh, what's one relationship skill I can learn? And maybe he needs to learn to set boundaries, right? And so basically shifting from why to what can help convert rumination into action. Rule number 2, no vague statements or overgeneralizations. So Elena used to say, I never make good purchases. I'm such an idiot, right? So these broad categorizations and labels of herself. So instead, choose one specific event. Like, oh, I should not have bought the car from that dealer who pressured me. Next time, I will go to a different dealer and take someone with me to help me not get pressured into a purchase.
Yeah, that's where they sell
very-
cars, right on the sales floor.
Uh,
Here's the thing. My analysis of that is you can still ruminate over, I shouldn't have bought that car. I'm such an idiot. Why did I do that? So I don't know if I like, I see what she's trying to do, but you can still take a specific scenario and then start to generalize it from it. So that's I get when she's like, I'm such an idiot. Don't say that. Say, why did I buy this car? I don't know if that's better. I'm concerned that that'll still just go from specific to general. I don't know if, again, I don't know. What do you guys think about
Well, so the broad thing she made was, I never make good purchases. Well,
Yeah.
do you go to Albertsons and do you buy some good food and stuff like that, right? So you
yeah,
do
it's pretty
make
easy to
good
disprove
purchases.
it. Name one good purchase you made, and people. can
Yeah,
it.
name one. And again, these are, like Jordan said, these are coping skills. These aren't getting to the root cause. They're just helping you try to not be so depressive.
Yeah, and
Albert.
she is helping train your cognitive mind to avoid what are called cognitive thought distortions.
Yep.
Which is, distorted thinking that's not actually true, that then adversely affects how you feel, which has some use. But again, your cognitive brain is like, get it in camera. Here's your whole brain, and here's the cognitive part. And I'm not exaggerating.
Yep.
Here's your whole brain. Here's the cognitive part. That is not an exaggeration. That's the part that they're working on. That's what they got to work with. Where we're like, here's your whole brain, and maybe we're working with like this much, which is incidentally where all the issues are. This other stuff is like monitoring heart rate and, things like that. So we actually, this little part is not, let's focus on this little part, but by the way, you really need to focus on this much if you want to fix everything.
Yeah.
Let's focus on this little part. Is it important to focus on this part? Yeah, but you got to focus on where all of the issues lie. We'll keep going.
My thought on that is like, if you already believe you can't do anything right, and then you pick an example of where you can't do anything right, aren't you just reinforcing the belief with specific examples?
Oh yeah, confirmation.
That's kind of my thing. And second of all, I didn't know Albertsons was still in business, Tim.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they are.
Yep. They're bought by Kroger.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's an Albertsons in Texas and Utah where I was.
They're all over the place. Yep.
Yeah,
Midwest thing maybe then.
just last January I shopped in.
Yeah, Publix. I should have used Publix. That way you'd recognize.
That's a
it.
Florida. That's a Florida one.
Yeah. All right, here we
Or
go.
Piggly Wiggly.
Nice.
Specific about a single issue and a single solution. With Ivan, instead of saying, why am I such a failure at relationships? He could do the locus of control activity, which is where you explore what you're responsible for and what you aren't responsible for. By clarifying this, he can see that he can't force someone to love him. It's not in his control whether someone chooses to stay, right?
You can choose to love yourself.
He can only work on himself. So in this way, you let go of the past and you just focus on the small, tiny actions you can take.
I don't know if you can let go of the past. That's the thing. It's like, oh, this person couldn't love me. What if your mental model, or I know Ryan doesn't like that term, your subconscious program in your head is no one loves me. And then you just found an example which said this person doesn't love me, and it reinforces the belief that you can't be loved. So this is my problem with what.
Yeah, she takes the negative and focuses on that rather than trying to get rid of the negative and focus on the positive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yep.
Okay.
Thinking without action. Take any situation that bugs you, identify what the value is, and then choose one action. So if you're annoyed that someone was hurtful, you value being compassionate. Act on that. If someone took advantage of you, you value good boundaries. Act on that. This is all about being the change you wish to see in the world. Okay, number 4 is no self-labels. So the new rule is you aren't allowed to label yourself as anything. You have to phrase everything as a behavior. So instead of saying, oh, I'm such a failure at relationships, no one could ever love me, right? Say, oh, I made a mistake in that relationship.
I have people give themselves positive labels all the time. Just no negative labels allowed.
That's it.
I don't know if that's what she meant, or no labels, period. But congratulations, I made my bed. That means I'm clean and disciplined. I got to work on time. I'm a motivated, punctual person. We call them core identity statements, but they always want to be good. What you don't want to do is say, my name's Ryan. I'm an alcoholic at AA, which keeps you identifying with, negative core identities. You want to avoid that like the plague, of course. And that's why I get on some of these red pill coaches that call people losers or bitches, or, it's just terrible.
Constant shame.
Yeah. And it's like, you guys think you're actually helping men. I mean, maybe some of what you give is good advice, but you do stuff like that, you're doing harm too. So don't act like you care about guys or women or whatever when you call them, call the women bitches, call the guys losers, lazy. No, flat out, they don't, if you're doing that, it's horrible. Don't do it. And it shows a level of incompetence. If you claim to be a person helping others and you do that, bare minimum, you have a level of incompetence and ignorance at core to what you claim to be doing.
Correct.
Or I did my best.
I think they're just misinformed. They don't recognize the impact that they might have on those.
Misinformed. Some are toxic. Some are just straight up toxic people.
It's not really.
Going back to
I don't want in my life.
the example she just gave versus labeling, like, I'm not good at relationships, versus she said, don't use a label, use a specific example. But again, this goes back to, isn't that just going to reinforce the belief that you're not good at relationships if you just pick a specific example?
It could, certainly.
And the thing is, I usually don't ruminate. When I've ruminated in the past, I usually don't generally ruminate. I ruminate over specific things that happened in the past.
That's true.
Yes.
This is my
That's what
criticism.
triggers you. That's
true.
what triggers you.
And so I'm not really sure how and I don't think she's like malicious or anything. I'm sure she means well, but this is my criticism of what she's saying, is because I usually don't think I'm worthless. I think this person really messed with my head,
Yep.
and so
other people do what she's talking about for sure,
Right.
though. Yeah.
Relationship, right? You change it to a behavior instead of a label. Instead of saying, oh, I'm such an idiot, say, oh, I'm going to do this one thing different next time. And this is all about changing the story that you tell yourself. Okay, here's rule number 5. If you point out the negative, you must counterbalance it with at least 2 positives. The negative may be true, but your tendency is to just completely ignore the positive. And I'm not talking here about like a toxic positive.
I just want to mention there are conscious stories we tell about ourselves and subconscious narratives. She's only talking about the conscious narrative.
Correct.
Activity where you're not allowed to feel sadness. I'm talking about increasing your.
And that's the problem. They don't deal with the subconscious narrative. They deal with the conscious cognitive only, which indirectly affects the subconscious, but indirectly, and it can change it only partially over a long period of time. That's the most these techniques can do with the subconscious.
Capacity to feel
Only partial change takes forever.
both sides of emotions, to see both sides of a situation. So for example, if you messed up an assignment at work, you might have the thought, oh, why am I so stupid? Why can't I get anything right? Here's where you slow yourself down. You can't get anything right? Are you sure? Yes, you did mess up on that assignment, but do you show up to work on time? Have you completed projects in the past? So you could say something like, oh, I messed up on that project and I've succeeded at projects in the past. I can learn from this experience to do better in the future. Okay, so there are 5 rules to stop rumination. I know that when you're deep in the throes of depression, the darkest thoughts
5 rules to manage rumination.
feel
You
the
have to
truest,
manage,
but they're most likely lying to
not
you.
stop.
So, of course, if you can, get some support from a wise friend or a mental health professional. I hope this has been helpful for you. Thank you for watching.
Get help from a wise friend. So I go back. So there are
They
so
are aware of
many
the
things.
subconscious. There's subconscious.
Yeah, there are
right
so
here. Go
many
ahead.
things that work when you have a good foundation of subconscious core beliefs. I'm going to bring up one here I heard about 17 years ago, and you know who this, Ryan, Elder Bednar from that church. And he says, he gave a talk years ago called Choose Not to Be Offended. And the way I've always lived my life as I've developed is nobody could ever get to me, right? Nobody could ever make me feel anything I didn't want to feel. My mom and dad gave me a pretty good foundation of core beliefs, even though we all have some subconscious trauma that I've dealt with over the years. But He said this here. When I first heard this 17 years ago, I go, man, that's exactly how I live my life, right? Or how I think. But now that I've learned what I've learned, it's not as easy as he presented it. And this is the words. When we believe or say we have been offended, we usually mean we feel insulted, mistreated, snubbed, or disrespected. And generally that is true, but that's not where it ends for most people. They ruminate past that, right? But he says, and certainly clumsy, embarrassing, unprincipled, and mean-spirited things do occur in our interactions with other people that would allow us to take offense. So this is about becoming offended and reacting to that offense. However, he says, it ultimately is impossible for another person to offend you or to offend me. Indeed, believing that another person offended us is fundamentally false. To be offended is a choice we make. It is not a condition inflicted or imposed upon us by someone or something else. That's almost true. And here's what I've learned in the last 3 or 4 years. When we choose to be offended, that choice is sometimes not a conscious choice. That choice sometimes is triggered by some of this mistreating or snubbing or disrespecting by some core belief inside a human being that they're going to trigger and react to. So it is no longer a cognitive choice. It is a subconscious reaction to being offended or mistreated or snubbed. And there starts that rumination, that anger, that resentment. I mean, it just goes downhill from there. So if you do have a very good, solid set of core beliefs, this is a very positive and true statement that nobody could offend you because you're in control of you.
True.
But with subconscious trauma,
you choose not to have your trauma triggered. I believe the answer is no.
If you have that
choose to not have
trauma
it triggered.
and that subconscious is controlling 95% of the decisions you make in the day,
yeah,
you may subconsciously choose to be offended and go down that rabbit hole. Just saying, it's the same thing with the Emma McCann is saying in that video, is that when you have a good set of core beliefs, these things do work in minimal situations. But Ryan, just like yourself, as damaged a core belief set that you had, there were reactions that you could not control. They just happened.
I couldn't prevent getting triggered because how our subconscious mind works is if something in the outside world is a match for a belief in us, the feeling tied to that belief gets
100%
triggered.
Yeah, 100%.
It's automatic. That's how it goes. Now, in the long run, can we choose not to be offended?
Yes.
Yes, but you can
it's
only
a big
make
effort.
that. You need to make the choice to clear out all the trauma that gets triggered when people offend you. Get rid of the trauma, and then you can consciously choose not to be offended. That's
in my point in saying all that, and it ties right into rumination. If you have been offended, which means you've been insulted or mistreated or snubbed or disrespected, and you go into a downward spiral on that event in the past with ruminating yourself into depression, that's the issue. The issue is the core belief set that you have, that all of us can help you clear that core trauma so that eventually these things won't trigger you and won't cause this depressive down spiral.
Yeah, and you know what we do is we take the painful beliefs, get them out, put the best beliefs in, and if the painful beliefs are gone, then the pain attached to the beliefs are gone as well. So we're not medical professionals. We're not like, if you come to us and say, hey, I have general anxiety disorder, it's like, well, you know, I don't treat that, but I'll find all your bad beliefs and change them.
Yeah.
You know, your subconscious beliefs, I'll get that, you know, all those painful beliefs out. And then, you aren't triggered. And, you know, I think I've told this story before. I think you've heard it, Tim, but 5-6 years ago, I was having dinner with my mom and my dad, and she's doing her normal narcissist behavior, using all these like sly little insidious ways to try and make me feel bad. And I just wasn't getting triggered at all. Like I literally didn't care. I'm like, I know who she is. I accept her for who she is. I know, like at a subconscious level, deep down, I know this has nothing to do with me. It's her. None of it's true. And so I really just didn't care. I just ignored it. I'm like, it's kind of like, here we go again. She's doing her normal thing,
Yep.
whatever. And after a while, I could kind of feel her watching me. And I looked over at her and she had her head cocked back like this and had just like this confused look on her face. And I knew what was going on. I instinctively knew. I'm like, she's been trying to screw with me all night and I just literally don't care.
And it ain't working.
Yeah, I mean, I literally felt neutral. She's doing these little barbs. I feel neutral. I feel nothing. And I just don't care. Whatever. I'm eating my dinner, whatever. I'm talking to dad, whatever. I'll talk to you too, whatever. And she's confused. And I'm like, oh, dang. She's like, the look on her face was, what do I have to do to get a rise out of this guy? Nothing's working. And she was baffled.
Control. She lost control.
She was baffled. And I kind of smiled a little and I'm like, this is my victory.
Yeah, baby. That's the ultimate test. That's the ultimate test. The source of all the trauma no longer triggers you
at all. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
It was just like, and after that, I ruminated on that a little, but it was like a good rumination. It's like, dang, man. Dang, I can't get triggered by her anymore. That's so cool. It's like, it was a victory. It was it was absolutely a victory. So
for sure.
Any final thoughts, Jordan, anyone else on
not me? Go, Jordan, go.
Ruminating, you got bad subconscious programs that are stuck in you. That's why you keep going back. Anything that happens over and over and over and over and over again, it's because our subconscious programs get in us in childhood and then they kind of solidify and they're down. For most people, they are down there in your subconscious, unchanging the rest of your life unless you change them. That's what we do. We change them. If you're ruminating over and over again, it's just a sign that there's one of these negative, unchanging beliefs with negative, painful, traumatic feelings tied to it that is the source of the rumination. You fix that, ruminating goes away.
I think
anything else?
Yeah, I wanted to cover this topic because I think it's something that almost everyone can relate to. I think we've all done it. We've all been in a situation where we feel like we need to, it kind of validates our own experiences. We need to continuously think about these negative things that have happened to us because I think in a way our subconscious mind is trying to process it. And if you use hypnosis to help process it, then you can go to the other side and actually really process it and let it go.
Yeah.
But
the
subconscious mind, it's almost like the subconscious mind is like almost yearning to like release this tension that you've had built up for so long, and it doesn't know how to get out. And really, what hypnosis is it is that outlet. It's a way of letting that tension out of your mind that's been sitting there. And I think
permanently,
so many people can relate to that feeling, and because everyone does it, everyone has done it before.
Yep.
And I know what it's like. We all know what it's like. But we're here. We have this podcast. We're live streaming because we're trying to show that there is a way to use that negative thought pattern in a positive way through hypnosis. And that's
hallelujah.
Yeah, that's all I want to say.
Excellent.
All right. Thanks for the comments, Tim and Jordan. That's our show for today. Rumination has a little bit of use, but if you keep doing it, then you're just stuck. Let's get you unstuck. We can get rid of you clear the trauma, and then the ruminating just stops. There's no more reason for it at all. That's just how it goes. You don't need to stay stuck because you may not have the knowledge on how to fix stuff. We have a big piece of the puzzle. I mean, you could say we have the knowledge, but I like to think there's always more we can learn. So we have some tools to give you the knowledge, to give you the power you had all along, just teach you how to unlock that power to get this stuff out of your life. And, ruminating, it's a type of powerlessness. Well, the truth is you don't need to ruminate because you can fix this stuff and you actually do have more power than you know. That's our show. Thanks for watching, guys.